How's it going, everybody? Bye, fan. Welcome back to another video. So we got Isaiah back up on here.
Yo, what's up? What's going
So
on, yo?
yeah. So
Yeah.
we just kind of were gonna talk about some things we didn't really talk about last time. Uh, I know, Isaiah, you were saying like numerology. And we're just gonna
Yes.
get into some of that stuff. So, do you want to start or do you want me?
Yeah. Go ahead and start it, bro.
Okay.
Just do whatever comes to you, and then
So there's with numerology there's two things. There's geometria and then there's numerology. So geometria is kind of like the adding, or is it the adding or is it the subtracting? It's the subtracting. It's the subtracting of numbers because the numbers have a specific meaning, and therefore when you subtract those numbers you get a certain number, or when you subtract any number, like it could be your license plate or anything really. It could be the time of day, whatever. And when you subtract that, then you get a specific number. And when you get that specific number, you have to realize that that number holds a significance or a certain energy. And then you can use that and you can see like the certain circumstance that you're in, or you can see what's kind of happening at a certain point in time or whatever it might be. So I'm sure if a lot of you look at the time that you're listening to this video right now, I'm sure that it'll add up to a specific number, which might have an impact of what you're kind of going through right now or how you're feeling or whatever it might be. You know what I'm saying? And so there's this thing in numerology as well that is it's called your life path, but you have other aspects too. It's similar to astrology in that way, like it could mean like your personality, or it could mean, ooh, that guy did me dirty. It could mean your personality, or it could be like, way others perceive you or whatever. And so one thing you have to understand is so there's only 1 through 9. There's no other numbers than 1 through 9. There's like people like, oh, well, what about 10 or 12 or whatever, right? Well, the way you use numerology or gematria is you'll be like, okay, so there's 12, so 1 plus 2, that's 3, right? Or 10. 10 is just 1. 0 is a number, but it just means like space in between. So you can take that with any number, like 55 would be 10, right? So it's 1. Or you can be like 67. 67 is 13. 13 is 4. Plus 1 plus 3 is 4, right? And so you can add them together to get a specific number like that. Or you can look at it as like, okay, so there's a 1 happening and there's a 3 happening. And so those are the things that are going down, right? So, and we'll try to talk about now, what does that kind of mean? Is that kind of your understanding of it, Isaiah?
Yeah, more of the life paths. The way I've understood it was that it kind of reveals like your identity, your strengths, weaknesses. Could be like your ambitions, your talents. Um, it also like shows the tone of like your circumstances or experiences that you're going through, and why certain events have happened, or it could be past or future events that could happen. It's kind of like that one soul energy behind it, that entity that you will be faced with for this lifetime. It could be with anything. Your natal chart and astrology is kind of the tools that you have to use, to pursue this life, your purpose. But it's all going to be in the realms of your life path. That's just kind of, that's something that you're going to have to understand for yourself, what you need to work on um, for you to, pursue this lifetime. But that's how I understood it. Gematria was more of something that I'm not well, into as well. But numerology was something that I kind of clinged on to. And for me, example, I'm an 8. And do you want to give a little breakdown of what you believe the life paths were, for
Okay.
example?
So Um, you okay? So I believe in reincarnation, but you don't have to believe in reincarnation to understand the life paths. But that seems to be kind of like a big aspect of it. But so the life paths in my eyes are kind of like, okay, so you were here and now you're going to this thing, or like it's where you're at spiritually right now. Like this is, it's kind of like in terms of like astrology, you have like your sun and you have your node and stuff. Your node, not node. Um, it's the same thing in that aspect, but now it's like more specified. It's like the more true energy of what you're kind of doing, where astrology and stuff is more so like the specifics, where numerology is more like the generalization of it.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's kind of that's your that's your life path, right? And the different numbers obviously mean different things. Like Isaiah said, he's an 8, and do you kind of want to talk about like what an 8 does, or what is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, before I get into that, you could figure out, your own life path.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's different, what's the word? Like, there's different numbers. Like you'll get different numbers depending on if you do your birthday, or there's ones for you can do your full name in. But there's like there's different numbers that will show you like, um, what's the word? I already told you this. It's like with your personality, what you achieve to be. It's like things like that. But so going back to me though with my life path, I am in life path 8, and ever since I got into astrology and with numerology, it feels like my actual life path has started, like my journey. Everything else before it was kind of just like it was just there and it was just blank. Um, but for a life path 8, it is more to deal with time, power, and more of a leadership, more of like that loner where you're in between worlds. I guess you could see the 8 as like the infinity symbol, where you're stuck in between, the 1, 2, and third dimension, and the fourth, fifth, and sixth, where you're stuck in between. You're stuck in reality, and then you're stuck in, into your higher self, where now you got to balance the two out, where you could either be more on, trying to focus on the higher self, what you want to become, and then reality. Then you have to focus on everything else, that things that you could see and you can deal with. So it's more of like a power struggle for an 8, for anyone that has an 8, because you could be so involved into something where you think you're putting, and the 8 also deals with time, where you could think that you're putting so much time into something when in reality you didn't put any time at all into it. This could be relationships or jobs or anything, and then it could be the vice versa, the opposite, where you've put so much time into something, and then when you actually look at it, take a step back, nothing has actually solved anything for you. So it's more of just like that power struggle. For me as an 8, I've dealt with that. Everything with family, and this also revolves around your natal chart, like you talked about. It just kind of portrays on what areas of life that you will have that struggle in, and more particular on the nodes. Just like for example, Fabian, I believe he is a 7.
Mm-hmm.
And what does a 7 have to do with you? We'll get down into each of the life paths and all that, but each one has a particular kind of setting behind it, a generalization. And what were your experiences with you being a 7?
I do want to touch on one thing real quick, that like I'm a 16/7, so again, as I said, you could look at like a 13. It's a 4, but you can look at the specific energy of like a 1 and a 3 interacting. So I'm a 16/7, so it's kind of like want self, or the like have self, or but need others type deal. So it's like that kind of situation. But in terms of just specifically 7, so I kind of think of it as like they're the ones that are like just learning about everything and anything, and they may be specifically learning on a subject, right? But so they'll be, but they necessarily don't really want to interact with that subject. If they do, then they know the repercussions of them interacting with that thing. So they're kind of like the alchemists, if you will, kind of deal. They're the ones that are like, oh, I'll take this thing, and then I'll add it together to get this thing, and then I'm gonna learn about how those two things interacted, so that I can, understand what I did. So it's like the philosophers, if you will, kind of deal. But that's for my life. Like that's kind of like why I started spirituality so early. It's that's why it's pretty much everything for me. It's everything that I think about all the time.
Like that self. It's like the way I see it with the seven, especially with you two, is like that self introspection too, where it's like you went within yourself way when you were younger to start analyzing
Yeah,
things. It was like that kind of deal, and
yeah,
that's usually how we see sevens as too. And it's more of a better for them because it feels like they're changing themselves to better themselves.
yeah,
They're like outweighing the options.
yeah. And so I do want to specify though, like there is masculine and feminine versions in numerology as well. So seven is masculine. So meaning I go outward first. So meaning like I'll do something, right? But then immediately after I did that thing, I'll immediately go within and then try to understand everything about what I just did. So that's another thing with the seven is like sometimes they're too introspective and not, you know, they don't extrovert, so therefore they don't learn anything, and that's kind of like detrimental for a seven. and especially with me being a Pisces and everything, I'm already naturally introverted. So if I didn't interact with people or anything, and I didn't have different viewpoints, then that would be bad, right? And that would cause me problems type of deal. But just gonna clarify that on that.
And that's good with the sevens too, because especially if they do interact with people, they already have that self introspection where if they've already been through an experience, just like someone else has, they can give them more insights of what to look out for because they've been there. They've already went within themselves by interacting by others, so they can already outweigh the pros and the cons, and they can give you. It's more like a teacher. It's like the sevens are very spiritual people. They love to teach, especially if they've already been through that kind of thing, and now they want to give it off to other people. They want to teach other people if they see them in the same circumstances.
Especially for my 16-7 though, but like you don't have to be spiritual to be if you're a seven though. We'll clarify on that, but
Yeah.
it's just whatever thing you're looking at, like, oh yeah, I learned about this, check this out, and then they're gonna be learning about what they said, and then now how that other person interacted or like reacted, I should say, to that thing, and they're like, oh, why that person react that way, and it's just kind of like always thinking kind of deal. That's how I'd say it.
So going back to the life paths too, we've discussed this a while ago, but I know you mentioned the 1 through 9s being feminine and masculines, and interchangeable. Which ones? Can you elaborate on those two?
It's so. Um, I'd have to re-evaluate which ones are specifically feminine, which ones are specifically masculine. But in terms of the 3, 6, 9, those are interchangeable, meaning they can be masculine or they can be feminine. It just depends on the circumstances or what the situation is. I'm getting crapped on.
You're still
But yeah, the 3, 6, 9 are interchangeable. Those are kind of like you could say like divine numbers, kind of deal. If you want. Like, it doesn't mean that the other numbers aren't as important. It just means that the 369 are at very um not well, I guess you could say special. They're pivotal points of your life
Yeah.
type deal. So you if, I have to take my dog out. He's gotta go pee. But if you wanna kind
Just
of
put a pamper on him, bro.
hmm?
Just put a pamper on him.
uh, if you wanna like just talk about how like you see the 1 through 9 like, and then I'll come back
Yeah.
and throw mine out. I'll be right back.
All right. So the way I've seen, I mean, then again, I've had a very, you know, various amounts of friend groups and coworkers, and usually, um, it's not always, but it's always it varies on different circumstances and all that. But usually, your upbringing and your closest friends and your parents or step parents or whatever, they will have somewhat of a correlation to your life path as well. It's not just that, oh well, I'm just an 8 and then so and so is a 9 or whatever. But with the life path one, they're more of like independence. They're the resilience. They have to go through life with the self first. They have to do things um, based off like that, like awareness, like that personal awareness, that experience that they have to go through. Um, they're very goal oriented people. They have much determination, dedication to anything that they want to achieve. They put everything into what they want to do. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're all human, but they still might become stagnant in some areas if they don't see progress in whatever goals that they want to. They're very intellectual people. They know how to deal with people and their tasks, but also with their career as well. They're best when they're left alone. They love to do things when they're alone. That's when they shine the most. Um, Other than that, they love freedom and they like to do basically everything alone. It's just kind of a you know a loner um, life path. Typically, that too with ones, and they usually have a north node in either a watery house or either the 12th house. But that's just to sum it up for a one, and for a life path two, they love community harmony. They love relationships. Um, it's also, from my understanding too, it's why is this bugging? What's going on? Why is it bugging?
What's bugging?
Oh well, my game just started bugging.
Do you want me to like set up the dimensions first?
Yeah, do that real quick.
Okay. Okay, so this is what I'm about to explain is like, yes, it can resonate with your path, but it's more so like it's what it is. It's the area that it is. It's not where you are specifically, but it can be. It's I don't know. I'll just explain it. So, okay. So first, you start off in quote unquote zero or God space, right? Or like the infinity or the nothing or whatever you want to say, right? First, you're there, and then you become an individual. So then you become one. You become either an idea, or thought form, whatever, right? You become one. So then you become the man and the masculine. So you extroverted out of God. You came out of God, right? And then after that, you become the two. So the two is now, okay, I'm an individual, and then I can go inside myself. So then you went inside. So then that was your that's your space. Like you went into your space, and so then after you went into the space, so then you understood now the duality. you understood yourself, your outer self, inner self type deal, right? You're in that cycle of going in and out, so the 1 and the 2. And then after that, you became the 3, which now is stepping outside of the cycle of the 1 and 2. So then when you step outside of the cycle of the 1 and 2, you become 3. And then the 4 is now you place judgment on now what you see after stepping outside of it. And so that's the 4. And then once you place judgment on it, then you become the 5, which now uses whatever power you have to, and whatever judgment you place to then realize, like, I'm sorry, let me redo that. So you take your judgment, and then now you use your power to put authority over that judgment, like giving a sentence to someone after you judge that, that crime type deal. And then after you did that, you become the 6, which the 6 is now it's called like becoming the 3rd person. And so 6 is a little harder for me to explain, but it's kind of like you were seeing. So when you were 3, you were seeing it in the eyes of the outside perspective. But when you become the 6, now you are essentially that outside source now. You are that outside perspective type deal. Like, you no longer are just seeing it that way. You are that way type deal. And then the 7 is now you're utilizing authority. So you no longer, like, in terms of like the 5, right? You used authority. Now you're utilizing authority with the 7. So now you know what can happen. You know what will happen if you do said thing, but either you choose to do that or not. But it's just knowing your authority. It's knowing I have this power, but I can use it or not use it or whatever, right? And then the 8 is now, it's like utilizing time. So when you utilize your time, now, like, you're kind of like in a certain circumstance, and you're kind of like either reliving it over and over, or you choose not to live it at all. It's kind of like that deal. So, like, they can kind of get stuck in their cycles or their situations, or they can, like, for example, you get what I mean. It's infinity. You're definitely in that circumstance type deal, right? And then the 9 is now the accumulation of all those things that happened, and now you're at the end of the cycle. And so now the only thing left to do is now you kind of you can only, like, really teach others of, like, this is what happened to me when I did this, and this is the circumstances, and if you did a quote unquote bad thing, or if you didn't utilize your time correctly, you didn't utilize your authority correctly, whatever, then it's bad. But if you did good things or whatever, and you want to teach about the good things that you did, that's what happens too. So it's like you can't do anything more because you came to that final conclusion with the 9. And so that's why a lot of 9s, like, they want to, they experience all the seeds that they created and everything that happened, and then finally with the 9 after that, they're just like, that's it. Like, the only thing left to do is teach, and if they still want to try to do more with themselves, they might feel unfulfilled because they can't go any farther than that, you see. And and I'm not saying that these are linear, but I'm saying you do this in your everyday life. And it doesn't have to linearly play out here either. It doesn't have to be 1 to 2 to 3. It could be immediately you look at a situation, go 4, and then you go 5, and then you go 9, right? You can use that interchangeably, but that's how it plays out. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I never thought of it like that either, but and that's why just like the 9s too, they try to experience things that they've already planted. So like they try to reap the benefits, but there's nothing else there. They've already reaped it. Like there's nothing else they could do besides give. They can teach,
Yeah.
and if they want to retry to, if they want to keep doing those things, then they will get nothing in return. Like you said, they will
Yeah.
be unfulfilled. So
Unfulfilled.
they will try to go out of their way to be fulfilled again. But in any circumstance or thing they want to go for, it's going to be that same thing, where they're unfulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how does this? I know you said the 3 6s and the 9s are interchangeable. So when you say the 3 is the outside perspective of the 1 and 2, you said the 6 is the one that's like, that is the thing though. That is the actual thing. Which is the outside perspective of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so how would the 9 correlate with the 6 and the 3?
Oh, like what is it? So it's like you come to the final conclusion of the entire circumstance. So therefore, meaning like after so you became 3, right? You looked at it as an outside perspective. You didn't judge it, but you looked at it as an outside perspective.
Mm.
Then the 4, that's when you judge it. Right? 5, you put your sword over, whatever. Then the 6, after that, now it's like you stepped outside of it again. You're like, okay, so now I am the 3rd, right? I am the thing that's outside of that cycle, right? And then the 9 is now I know everything about that circumstance, right? And it doesn't mean that they know everything about that circumstance. It's that they feel like they know everything about that circumstance. It's that they came to that conclusion, and then that conclusion's so stuck that there's nothing else for them to do. They can't they're not gonna reevaluate it because they already know, right? And that's like not Life at 9 is like a special circumstance of that, but you use 9 every day, like everybody uses their 9 section, but but the thing is with the 9 section, if now let's say an individual comes, right, and then comes to the 9 and brings the 9 a new idea, then what happens is it becomes 10, which is creating a new cycle, which then that's why 10 is 1, right? So then now there's a space between what you previously thought and then what you now know. No, I meant what you previously knew and now that you are learning again, kind of deal, I guess you could say. You see, and then that's why the numbers double. So then that's why there's 33, 66, 99, That's why it happens, right? And now, if you want to look at it as okay, there's 9 dimensions, and well, if there's 9 dimensions, then there's 9 in every dimension. So meaning
There's 1 through 9 in one dimension.
there's a 3rd in the 4th dimension, meaning you can be in a physical body in the 4th dimension, type deal. And then vice versa here, you're a 3rd, so you're in a body, you're outside, and then you're a 3rd in the 3rd dimension. You're in the 3rd dimension based on just looking at your body and the way it is. So if you were in the 2nd dimension, right, then you would only be able to go in and out, or out. You'd be able to go in and outside of yourself only. You wouldn't be able to see others, because you could see others, and then you're in the 3rd, because now you could see people outside of you, right? It's like one of those things. But there's so many circumstances, right? It's hard to know exactly where you are at, because even though this is 3 of 3, then you could be like, well, what about if there's other life forms here, right? Or if there's other realms you can go to in the 3rd dimension, then there's other bodies you can inhabit. So that would be its own little cycle as well. So then you might be the 3 in the 3, or in the 3 in the 3 dimension, but then you might, be in this area only. instead of this area or whatever, right? So there's just so much. It literally goes for infinity. But yeah. You know what I'm saying? This is kind of it's a deep topic, but if you start to realize that you do this every day, and then you realize like, oh, I'm going through these 9 dimensions all the time. I'm constantly taking an idea, then I think about that idea, and then
Two.
and then I fucking I step outside of that idea and try to look for what it is, and then it's just like, but some people don't do the 3. Some people go straight to 4. They go 1 to 4. Idea, oh, judgment, and then they immediately know. You're like, oh, that's not right. 5, it's funny. It just happens all the time.
So going back to like, so you said that we do these like you can go through each number like whenever, like on call, right? But like, what if you weren't, like, for me, for example, right? I'm an 8.
Yeah.
So, but wouldn't it just be I do the things of 1 through 7 or 1 through 8 instead of the 9, or would it still be all of them?
No, it's still all of them. It's still all of them, but like, the thing is, like, the way I think about the life path is like, now it might be harder for you to get to the one above you, or it might be harder for you to how do I explain this? Like, you can still, even though you're an 8, you can still reach 9, because you have things that you would quote unquote know, right? Things that don't change, right? You already have those things, so therefore you can access the 9th dimension. So it's not something that you can't reach, right? But the thing is, the way I think about, like, now, since you're an 8, it's more so like, that's the thing that needs work, or that's the thing that you resonate with the most, or that's the thing that you want to do the most. That's the place that you stay in. Like, that's the dimension that you like stay in, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, totally.
So yeah, like, for me, I stay in wanting to do the 7 things, but that doesn't mean that I can't be an 8. It's just not a place that I stay in, kind of deal. But,
so would you say the life paths, like, let's just say the 1 and the 2s, would you say it'd be a lot harder to reach the ones above it, since it's only just solely on itself, like the idea of it?
harder is a bad word, because so the way that the numbers work, it's a top-down system. So the 0 would be at the very top, and then the 1 would be right under that, and then the 2 would be right under that, and the 3 would be right under that. But the 4 would be on the side, so the left or the right, if you will, and then the 5 would be on the other side, right? So initially it was just like a 1, 2, 3 thing. So those are so it was a 1, 2, 3 thing. Yeah, the tree of life. So it was a 1, 2, 3 thing, and then came the angles. So then came, the different sections. So then it ospreyed, right? Just like a root, where the root grows down and then it spreads out, right? It's like that. So technically, the easiest thing that you can reach is the 9 and the would it be the 8? Yeah, the 8. The 8 and the 9 would be the easiest things for you to reach, but you're always in the 3. You're always in, because you're in the 3, right? You're always in that thing, but it's easier for you to grasp the 9 and the 8 than it is for you to grasp the 5 or the 4, so to speak, right?
Mm.
It's easier for you to do these things. So it's not like it's harder. It's just that's not what you embody, kind of deal. Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you should also put up that tree of life too, just so they understand.
Yeah. I can throw up that image.
It'll make a lot more sense than just verbally trying to
Yeah, explain it. But I think the root analogy is a very good one. With the it grows down and then spreads
Mm.
out, right? It's the same concept. Now, okay. Now this is the fun part. This is my favorite part. Now, okay, you're in these sections, right? Like, so I'm in the 7, you're in the 8 section, right? Now, okay, you now can offspring out of that. So if I'm in the 7th dimension or whatever, I can offspring out into my own branch of the tree of life, right? So then it's infinite, right? And it can just keep going, and then I can branch off into that one, and then I can branch off into that one, right? Now the question is, can we get back to the 0? How do we get back to the 0? And what does getting back to the 0 mean? Does that mean you as an individual cease to exist and you become part of the whole again? What does that mean? Like, quote unquote God space, right? Like, what does that do, right? And here comes the Luciferian nature. Do people want to do that? Do people want to go back to God and become part of the whole and give up being an individual? That's the thing that intrigues me the most, right? You know what I'm saying?
Well, people don't. People don't.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's hard, right? I mean, it's like no, I'm me. I don't want to be that, right? Unless but what if that is so peaceful and so you're done with all the bullshit, right? It's like you don't have to be in it anymore. You're just done, right? And maybe that's what God offers, right? Serenity, away from all this shit, right?
It's just we can't fathom that, which is
Yeah.
our struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that Tree of Life is a good analogy of it, because that's where it stemmed off of. Not just it's and that's the thing too with religion, is that they think that the Tree of Life is an actual physical representation of a tree, and I think that's where people get lost in too. And not just that, but including in the Bible and everything, they don't have these people take it so physically that it's not metaphors and analogies, and there's no actual interpretation for it. It's just things that they think that they can see, that they visualize.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is a tree. But it's just the way you perceive it. I get what you're saying. But yeah, it is a tree. I mean, you can look at a tree and you can see how it has different branches and not specifically 9, right? Obviously, but it's just physical things are trying to teach you about things that happen everywhere. Those things are true, right? The way things branch off, the way things gravitate towards each other. These are undeniable truths, and the physical world is just trying to teach you about all those, Well, now the mental world's a little harder to understand with that, because the mental just really gets you lost, and that's why a lot of people will say, Lucifer controls the mind, right?
Are they wrong?
No. I mean, there's a lot to it, right? But numbers are a good way to start, I think.
Well,
Now, and I started after astrology, so now coming back to the numbers and I look at it and I'm like, wow, this has so much knowledge, and it's a simple number, right? But it just means the number means so much.
So do you think this would have been a um, more? So do you think numerology would have been a more efficient way of um, learning about this topic first rather than everything else ahead of time, like gematria and numerology?
Well, not for me specifically. Um, I think the way that it happened for me specifically was the way it was meant to happen. But for others, it might be. For a more logical person, they can have more of a psychological view on it, and then that can help them a lot more, right? And then that can branch them off into different stuff. But for me specifically, I think it was a good thing that it started off with like the fantasy of like what was God, what what is the devil, quote unquote. What is these things, right? For me specifically, that was a good start, but um, for others, it might be for sure. And it's easier for you to explain the numbers and the psychology of these things than it is for you to explain a sign to someone,
Mm.
because they will believe the psychological and the number view more so than they'll believe, oh, the planet in the sky is giving me energy. Like, come on, they're not gonna buy that right off the bat, right? So it just depends on who that person is, and where they kind of started, or what they like, right? Because it has to resonate with them. That's the example, or why you give examples. It's because they have to find some sort of connection to that thing. So they have to, so that they can understand, because that's the only thing they know, right? It's the only version that they get. So, yeah. And I
It's
just
kind of
wish people would just think about it more. I mean, dude, like, it's everything. Like, I know, like, my ass is, like, really all I think about, right? But, you should acknowledge these things of, like, why you're doing stuff, and having just a view of, like, you're something and then you're nothing is, like, it's true, but there's just so much more to it, right? And I don't know. I don't understand why they don't want to understand that, I guess. And I understand, like, some people it scares them, and some people just don't know where to start, right? And I get that. And that's kind of what these videos are for so I can change people's views, and I can maybe give them a starting point if they resonated with it and all that. So, you know,
yeah. What do you think like makes it more? So, do you think that numerology would be like for you, for example, it already came to you, but do you think understanding the sun sign seems more pseudo and unrealistic rather than the psychology of it? Because like it could be taken back to both of it too, where it is both psychological, but what makes astrology more pseudo and the stars made me this way, and oh, I'm not gonna believe that stars have influenced me this, like what are your views on that? Why do you think it makes it so pseudo?
well, one, it's the perception of it, right? That's a huge thing. People have always thought, that astrology is this and that, and they've always had negative views of it, right? So that's one aspect. And then another aspect is, like, it's much easier for you to tell someone, like, you had an idea, didn't you? And they'll be like, yeah. And then you thought about it, didn't you? Yeah. It's much easier for you to explain it in that way, and then it'll kind of break down their process of how they're thinking, and then they can kind of look back on that and be like, oh yeah, I do that, right? It's much easier for you to do that than for you to tell them, like, based on words especially, right? Numbers are just pure, but when you look at the words, then you're gonna be like, well, sun sign. That already, as soon as you said sun sign, that already gives them a view of what that means, right? They think, oh, what does sun mean to them, and what does sign mean to them, right? They already have that view. So just off the bat, you lost them, or you gained them, whatever. But you see what I mean? It's not as pure as numbers are.
Mm.
That's the whole reason why astrology is more specifics, and yeah. So
It
It's a system, right? just like the numbers are a system, but it's just the system's bigger. It's like, not to say that numbers aren't the biggest thing, right? But it's more words, more examples, more energies to interpret, right? Because of the offsprings, so there's just so much to it that, like, it really off puts people. And then again, with the negative connotations of the people that, like, astrology is always looked down upon. So astrology is looked at as like the Satan and shit. This is bad. This is, tarot is looked at as bad, which it can be. Everything can be, but it just depends.
so it's easier for someone to, just like for me, for example, like when I started learning about this too, I never thought I'd be, become the person I am today. Do you think it's easier for people to gravitate towards you when they are looking for answers, when they're in a spot where they lost something, or is it more like, how would you perceive that? Like,
Yeah.
is it easier for people to come to you or to anyone else for answers rather than, them looking for themselves?
Yeah. I mean, for sure, just like if you're in a bad headspace, right? you then you kind of realize that whatever the situation may be, something's not working, right? So you go outside of yourself. In this circumstance, right? Someone goes outside of themselves to find out that answer, right? Because the answer is not inside themselves, they think, right? And so therefore it's easier for them to get connected with this, because now this can provide answers, right? And then once they get those answers, if they continue it and they actually do, their work, and they do all this stuff, then they can be like, oh, the answers were inside myself the whole time. Like, oh, wow. But sometimes, sometimes you need to go outside to figure out what's going on inside, right? And if you had to do that, then that's okay. But it it's easier to do that. But in a perfect world, right, you wouldn't have to be in a bad headspace. You wouldn't. In a perfect world, you could be in a good headspace and be like, you're like, oh, I just want to do this. I just want to learn, see what's going on, and that would be great. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. It usually stems from a bad point of view, right? Because if they were in a good headspace and they think they know everything, they think that things are working, things are all okay, things are all right, right? And so it just depends, what kind of headspace they're in. But I think, like, I for sure was in a bad headspace when I figured my stuff out, right? And it's just how it worked for me, and it kind of, that's why some of the other people that I have taught, like, it seemed to work out because they were in a bad place too, and that's kind of what I understand, and that's where I learned from, and that was what I was able to teach them when they were in that bad headspace, right? But yeah, in a perfect world, you wouldn't have to be in a bad headspace, but.
And that's where, going back to the life paths too, that's where I believe that that spiritual walk comes into play, is once you become aware, and not just even when you're in the bad headspace, but once you become aware of yourself, and that life path will really take into play of what you need to look at in your life, and where those energies actually portraying, and that you could work in, and that you could actually pursue your walk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why I have a few people that say that too, where they don't believe in the numerology or gematria or astrology or anything, because um, they see it as like a trend, or it's just something
Mm-hmm.
that they can just like briefly learn about it. But it's like, well, then they're not really like, they're still continuing to do their walk without
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging that that is the actual reason that they're trying to avoid it for, is because the understanding of it, they don't want to.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's true, man. And it sucks. I mean, like, some people are in and out of it all the time. Like, they they're like, oh yeah, I want to learn about this stuff, figure myself out, this and that. Then they get some information, and then they dip. And it's like it doesn't really work that way. And then they'll come to a conclusion that they're unfulfilled, and they're unfulfilled because they quit. They woke themselves up, maybe, or maybe they woke themselves up to a specific circumstance, and then they dipped. And because they're awake now, then they can't go back. Then that's kind of the problem with the spiritual. Well, not problem, but that's the point of spirituality. Is like it's not a here and there thing you can go in and out of. It's like that's it. You're done. Like you woke up. Like if you stop working on yourself or stop working on your path or what you want to do, then you're gonna feel so much worse than you did previously because you already know now. Yeah.
And then even if they are aware, they want to shy away from it, they're still going to continue doing the things that aren't good for them, that aren't, that they're going to keep doing the things that are bad for them that they need to work on without even being aware of it. But yet, you know what I'm saying? It's like that constant thing of like, okay, are you going to do something about it or are you going to stay stagnant? It's like either way, once you are aware of the truth, once the truth has been told to you, then you're going to have to actually face it at some point where you're going to waste years and who knows how long. And so at some point, you're going to be like, wow, waste all this time.
Yeah, you're going to be pissed at yourself, yeah.
It's the evil world we live in.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing, even if you take a small example, like, you know how to do something in a game, right? And you know exactly what to press at what exact time, but you didn't. And now you're pissed. Now you're so mad because you knew what to do, but you didn't do it. Yeah, it's funny. But if you didn't know what to do, then you're like, oh, what just happened, right? And then you want to learn about it, and then you become aware of it, and then you utilize it. Yeah, it's funny. This is
that's me.
Yeah.
Don't call me out. Yeah, but I like how you put that though. Like this isn't just a thing where you can't just. Well, it's not one foot in, one foot out either. You can't be on both sides. It's only going to bring you repercussions that you don't want, and you're going to have to face it regardless.
Yeah.
If you're aware of it or not, But it's better. Like the path is narrow already once you're aware. Might as well do God's work here, and who knows what after.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a good ending point. I'm sure the video's getting up.
Yeah, mama.
Yeah. But again, we'll have Isaiah up here on the channel again and talk about some more subjects. We'll really get in depth with all this stuff. But I hope you guys enjoyed these type of videos. Let me know if you guys want a specific game you want to see. I know, like, just looking at me and it's not the most fun thing to do, right? But hopefully you can enjoy my crappy gameplay, But
bro, you sexy.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, I'll see you in the next one. Let me know what you guys think and what you want to hear about. All right. Peace out.